this video is for you if you're trying to do any sort of work on yourself. Typically, when we do that, we're seeking to regulate our emotions better, understand why we have the habits we have, why we act the way we do, why certain things trigger us. We're trying to become more mature on all areas of the spectrum. And so that's kind of what I'm going to talk about, because until recently, I was looking for specific things, right? I knew that certain things triggered me. I knew that certain things caused a certain response from me. And then I knew also that your emotions and other responses that you have indicate a deeper problem typically. They point towards something. They're warning flags that say, hey, look at me. I'm trying to get your attention so that we can bring your attention towards something that needs addressing, right? And that's true, right? That would be the indication. That would be like a symptom. Your leg hurts and you look down at it and you realize you're getting stung by a bee, right? So your leg is giving you, the pain is giving you a symptom to the actual problem, which is that you're being stung by a bee. But that's not always the case. And so that's what I'm going to get at in this video here is a lot of times what we don't realize is we've simply adopted a belief that doesn't actually have a deeper meaning or a deeper problem or a root cause. For me, that would look like anger. I would typically get angry at very little things. And the funny thing is I don't consider myself a very angry person. And most people don't consider me very angry either. When it comes to being very level-headed and very rational about things, I pride myself in that. And I think a lot of you do too, probably. But there would be little things that would tick me off a lot. And I couldn't understand why. And I said, well, all right, notice the emotion, notice when I'm angry, see what it's pointing towards. And what I actually found out that's very interesting was it wasn't actually pointing towards anything bigger, right? It was just pointing towards a false belief, right? And that belief was something I'd learned in childhood. And here's what I'd learned in childhood, right? Let me share this story with you. When I was growing up, I would go to my father for things. I would say, hey, can you drive me to the store? I want to buy a snack. Or can you help me work on this toy I'm trying to put together? Or, the lawnmower is malfunctioning. Can you take a look at it? Right? I would come to him with a problem, so to speak, or with something I wanted help with, or with a question. And it didn't matter what it was. It didn't matter how big or small it was. It could literally be, hey, Dad, what's 2 + 2? Does it equal 4? I'm just curious. But he would respond a certain way, very consistently. He would usually respond on a deeper level out of fear, right? Which I didn't understand as a child. But he would become anxious. He would let it stress him out. He would overreact typically. And many times he'd become angry. Not at me, but at the fact that he was being interrupted from what he was doing, right? And this is typical for men. Men really don't like getting interrupted when we get this tunnel vision as guys. And we're out to solve a problem. And, people say that men are very, we don't do well multitasking, right? And so when we're focused on one task, we are focused on one task, like bam, tunnel vision, right? And so I would come to my father, maybe he was working on a project and he would experience these. And I don't know why he would experience these, right? Again, I was a child at the time. So, I didn't understand that maybe he was afraid that his boss would get angry. I didn't know his relationship with his boss that well. Maybe he was worried that he would fall behind and people were expecting him not to fall behind. Maybe he was afraid of being set back. Maybe he was already behind on projects. I don't know, right? But this is how he reacted. And I'm not here to tell you I'm judging his reaction. I'm here to tell you that as a child, I misunderstood that because I was a child. And this is what I learned from it. I learned that any inconvenience was worth getting angry over. That was the message that I took from that. As a child, being limited in maturity and, your brain is still forming, you have a very hard time, without knowing it, understanding other people. And so you learn things on a very limited scale. And so the message I realized I'd learned was that, again, inconvenience equaled anger. Now, that wasn't always my father's response, like I said, right? Anytime I came up to him, he saw it as a reason to stress over it. And I came to learn it and identify it as I'm an inconvenience. I am bringing inconveniences to my father. Inconveniences equal anxiety. They equal fear. They equal stress, they equal anger, they equal overreaction, right? Because that was how he responded, right? And so the biggest one I took away from that was anger, right? So anytime I became inconvenienced in the future, I would react angrily. And I wouldn't understand why I was reacting angrily, right? But what I'm really trying to tell you here is that a lot of times when you experience these things, for me it was anger, for you it might be anger, it might be something else. There's actually not a deeper problem. There's just a misunderstanding. There's just an incorrect belief, right? And my incorrect belief was, if I'm inconvenienced, anger is the appropriate response. And that was something I learned as a kid. And it's, once you realize that, once you put two and two together, and trust me, putting two and two together can be very, very difficult. You don't understand it at all, right? To my rational mind, I was sitting here going, why am I angry over this? Yeah, I understand I don't have control over the fact that I woke up this morning and my tire was flat, or I don't have control over the fact that the dog stepped in his own turd, or I don't have control over the fact that someone didn't call me back when they said they would at a specific time, right? What I didn't realize was it was a childhood belief of anything that I think is inconveniencing me. I think doesn't even have to inconvenience me, right? Yeah, the flat tire might not be ideal, but it doesn't have to be an inconvenience. I don't have to drive anywhere that day. I could just say, hey, call a tow truck, get it towed. Yeah, you could consider it an inconvenience, but you could also consider it just life and see nothing of it, right? And that's what the Stoics teach, right? Anything outside of your control, you shouldn't be focusing on. You should let it be as it is, right? Focus on what you can control and you'll find peace in your life. But at any rate, I was noticing these certain reactions. Specifically, anger was one of them. And you might notice certain reactions. You might notice you become anxious if you're inconvenienced. You might notice you become angry if people say a certain word, right? And that's because as a child, we learned to associate specific things, words, actions, responses with something else. And then we adopt that and we express it. And it doesn't serve us. But there's not a deeper problem. That's what I'm really getting at, is you don't have to dig for a deeper problem. All you have to do, all I had to do, was say, I see this, I perceive this as an inconvenience. It is making me angry. But that was an incorrect belief. Anytime I'm faced with something I see as an inconvenience, I, one, don't have to see it as an inconvenience, and two, if it is an inconvenience, I don't have to be angry about it. That was just a belief that doesn't serve me, that I can dispose of. That's the big thing right there. You can identify that it was nothing more than a belief that doesn't serve you, and you can dispose of it. So now, and of course it takes practice. It takes so much practice, right? That's it, reps to success. That's why they say that, right? Practice makes perfect. Fake it till you make it, right? All of these are on the same point here. Now every time I'm faced with an inconvenience and I notice myself become angry, right? Because as an adult, there's a space between what happens and your response. And you can step into that space and respond, right? And so now I can step into that space and I can say, I want to get angry. I want to get angry because of an old belief that doesn't serve me, that I actually just misunderstood as a kid, right? An old belief where I thought that because I was coming to my father for help with something, it stressed him out. He saw it as an inconvenience. Or maybe he didn't, and I just thought he saw it as an inconvenience, right? And assumptions make an ass out of you and me. And I saw it as an inconvenience, and I saw the appropriate responses to inconvenience as anger, even though that wasn't always his response. Sometimes he was understanding and helpful. Sometimes he stepped away from what he was doing. Sometimes he was only stressed or anxious. Sometimes he was angry. Sometimes he overreacted, right? But I picked the worst of those, right? And that was on me. I didn't know any better as a kid. You didn't know any better as a kid. But that was on me. I picked the worst of those, and I said, anger. I'm going to misunderstand that he sees this as an inconvenience, and I'm going to choose the response to inconvenience is anger, right? And now I can look back and I can say, that was me completely misunderstanding something because I was a kid, and I deserve to forgive myself because I was a kid. I didn't know any better. I didn't understand what I know now. And as an adult, I can now realize that this belief is going to take some practice uprooting, but I can step in between what I perceive and how I perceive it and my response. Realize it was an old belief that didn't serve me and that actually was just incorrectly created by myself. I didn't know any better. And I can create a new belief, and I could say, inconvenience is an opportunity to grow. Inconvenience is an opportunity to practice virtue. Inconvenience is an opportunity for nothing. It's just another piece of life rolling by you in the film. You know, it's nothing at all, right? So you can completely change that story, that belief. And you don't have to look for something deeper. That's the message I'm trying to get to you, is sometimes there's nothing deeper, nothing at all. It's just a silly belief that we created. And the comfort, if you can find it, is finding when you created that belief, right? Because looking back, it clicked and I could remember creating that belief. I said, wow, I see myself as a kid doing this. And when I was able to look back and see that, I was able to find peace and realize that my anger wasn't anything. It wasn't caused by anything. It was just caused by a false belief. It wasn't something deeper that I had to dig for. It wasn't something someone had done to me. It was only an old belief that I'd created out of lack of knowledge in my youth. That was it. That was all, right? So you don't have to look for something deeper in every case. And you don't even have to look for what caused that belief. All you have to do is say, it does not serve me to get angry over this or to respond in whatever way you're responding. And it helps to write the narrative. You know, it helps to sit down and to say, what is causing me to respond this way, right? Like in my case, what's causing me to be angry? And I noticed it was inconveniences, right? That's what I labeled it as. I labeled it as inconveniences. And so it helps to identify that and to say, blank equals blank. That's a poor belief. Get rid of it, right? So you don't always have to dig deeper. Sometimes all you have to do is recognize your belief that A equals B or 2 plus 2 equals 5. Realize it's not serving you. Step in between. See if you can't find a time where you created that belief, probably as a child when you didn't know any better. Forgive yourself for creating that belief, because that does help. And just work to respond the way you'd actually like to respond when things like that occur. Peace.